Monday edition of The Absolute Truth. And breaking news over the weekend, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth fired the Biden holdover Director of Defense Intelligence Agency Director Jeffrey Cruz. Now, we were one of the very few reporting on this back on August 1st. According to our sources, Cruz allegedly continued to shield the intelligence community, trying to protect them, was blocking the release of sensitive election-related information, and protected the CIA's role in the Russia hoax. Just as a reminder, here's our August 1st Swamp Watch about former DIA Director Jeff Cruz. Well, the current director is the same as the old DIA director under Joe Biden. His name is Lieutenant General Jeff Cruz, and according to our sources, he's busy protecting the intelligence community and causing problems with report sharing information regarding the most unsecure election in history. So let's get a little history on Director Cruz. In June 2023, Cruz was appointed by then President Joe Biden as the next director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. Then on December 11th, 2023, Cruz's appointment as the new director of the DIA was confirmed by the U.S. Senate. He took office on February the 2nd, 2024, when he officially assumed the position as the director of DIA. And he noted also in 2024, in this veiled statement right after the 2024 election to a room of government and contract spooks for hire, that they probably weren't very thrilled with the outcome of the election.
But based on somehow inadvertently being your first speaker after the U.S. elections, I would offer, I'm suddenly realizing why this date was open, and that I'm now questioning my sense of timing in speaking events. But actually, I think my team was absolutely right. The work we are all doing together is important. It's relevant to every administration.
And according to our sources, Director Cruz has been keeping important intelligence related to the 2020 election from being widely disseminated to the community at large. Our friend Patrick Berm confirmed that, quote, this man is protecting the CIA from exposure in their role in the Russia hoax. John Brennan was behind the Russia hoax, says Byrne, adding, I promise, I was there. So we want to give credit where credit is due. Good job, Secretary Hegseth, on helping to drain this swamp, and we hope that you continue to do so, because there's quite a bit more to drain, and that's the absolute truth. Up next, Michael Waller after this commercial break.
Whether it's being a weekend warrior or spending time with your family, feeling your best is the key to doing the things you love. That's why I'm excited to tell you about Nirvanta. It's a natural solution designed to help you stay active and live well naturally. Nirvanta is a topical blend of all natural essential oils like frankincense, myrrh, and a proprietary gold standard plant stock extract. It's perfect for your hands, feet, knees, back, or anywhere else that needs a little extra care. Use Nirvanta proactively as part of your daily maintenance routine, and you're guaranteed you're going to feel the difference. Simply massage Nirvanta in for at least 60 seconds, 2 to 3 times a day to get the best results. And if you're not completely satisfied, you get your money back. No questions asked. There's simply no risk and no reason not to try Nirvanta today. Right now, you get 15% off with code Lindell exclusively at NirvantaHealth.com. So stop reaching out for that medicine cabinet. Get Nirvanta instead and experience the difference. Go to NirvantaHealth.com. Use code Lindell to get 15% off today. Nirvanta Health. Live well naturally.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us to get those concessions, and now they have these general licenses where companies like Chevron are actually providing billions of dollars of money into the regime's coffers, and the regime kept none of the promises that they made. So all that needs to be re-explored, because in Venezuela you have the Russian presence, you have a very strong Iranian presence. The Iranians in fact are beginning to build drone factories for the manufacture of Iranian drones in our own hemisphere. Not to mention the long practice of the Venezuelan regime of providing real but illegitimate passports to operatives for Hezbollah in our own hemisphere.
That was Secretary of State Marco Rubio testifying recently before Congress, addressing concerns that the Trump administration is readying to launch an attack against Nicolas Maduro's regime in Venezuela. The White House has ordered an incredible amount of military assets off the coast of Venezuela, ostensibly as part of the administration's big push to crush the various drug cartels that dominate the region. But many are speculating that President Trump is not only targeting the drug cartels of Venezuela and Colombia. It is believed that this is part of a larger movement by the administration to oust Venezuela's strongman, Nicolas Maduro himself. And that's certainly what Maduro thinks, apparently, is happening here. Immediately after U.S. warships started arriving off the coast of Venezuela, Maduro announced that he was mobilizing a 4.5 million man militia to fight what he described as the gringos. We seem to be living in the era of wars and rumors of wars. From Ukraine to Iran to Taiwan and China, everywhere we turn, tensions are mounting and bullets are flying. Is Venezuela the next domino to fall? And more importantly, perhaps, is a potential U.S. invasion of Venezuela a good thing? After all, President Trump has promised to avoid new wars. But in Maduro's case, a special exemption might have to be made. Between his government's support of narco-terrorism, which we have reported on in detail on this show, and Venezuela's possible role in stealing America's 2020 presidential election, not to mention others, the 2020 election for Joe Biden, Maduro has proven himself to be a bigger threat than anyone previously thought. We're now joined by J. Michael Waller. He's the author of the book, Big Intel, How the CIA and FBI Went from Cold War Heroes to Deep State Villains. And he is well-versed as well on the situation going on in Venezuela. Everyone, and I always give this caveat as I start talking about the escalation with Venezuela. I am very anti-conflict. You could even call me a non-interventionist. But this is our own hemisphere, and we have ignored it for far too long. And I have learned over the last couple of years just how effective the cartels, Maduro, the Venezuelan regime has been in interfering in our elections and trying to destabilize our country. Are we headed for an invasion of Venezuela, Michael?
It's really hard to say. It looks that way. I think it can be done without military force because we have a lot of tools at our disposal. The problem is a lot of our friends think that regime change is a bad thing. And indeed it is when it's run by leftists and Marxists. But really, it's a tool that we've always had for most of our history to secure our own interests without having to go to war, especially where regimes themselves are illegitimate. They're aggressive, they're subversive, and they're a threat to everybody. So there's no time better than now to remove the Maduro regime in Venezuela. You don't have to do it with military force, but it's always great to have it as a backup.
What would that look like? I know there is Ms. Mikado, who has been sort of the darling in America, potential opposition leader replacement. I think perhaps Americans aren't so hesitant about regime change as the aftermath, right? We all agree that Maduro is terrible, but is there an option that benefits U.S. interests to follow?
Sure, there is. And the problem is with the so-called darlings of the United States are really socialists who really don't like us. We saw this in the first Trump administration where they had that really stupid campaign to back this socialist.
Guaido?
Guaido. And all
Juan
they did was
Guaido.
have people march and yell and scream in the streets, which Venezuelans are great at doing it, but they never channeled that people power. So U.S. policy
Yeah.
was just to support protests to no end. But if you look at applying the force of that population to help them pull out the eyes and ears of their secret police at the local level, and then oust their own government on their own with sort of our moral support. It could have been done back then, but the opportunity was wasted under a whole lot of silliness. So now we're stuck in a situation where so much of that Venezuelan opposition has fled the country, and Maduro has emptied his prisons and sent his cartels in to make war on us. As Secretary Rubio said, I'm so glad that he mentioned this conclusively, that the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has a factory to build drones at El Libertador base in Venezuela. Now, imagine what the threat that is to us. Look at what the Israelis did building drones in Iran. Look at what the Ukrainians did with drones. So you can see what the Iranian regime, with its Russian and Chinese backers in Venezuela, are doing with drones. We can only, it doesn't take a lot of guesswork to figure out what they're going to do to us with it.
And then there was the whole paramilitary force that was sent into the United States, Tren de Aragua. We're still busy trying to deport all those people. And we've reported exclusively on this show something that I haven't seen anywhere else. And that is Maduro has repurposed some of those that have been sent back to Venezuela, those gang members, the paramilitary troops, and are now sending them into Europe to try to do the same thing. I also shared on my Substack an exclusive briefing that was provided to the Director of National Intelligence in her office, Tulsi Gabbard, about Tren de Aragua, who they are, exactly how they tie directly to Maduro's regime, the funding mechanisms, how they work. Tulsi made some news over the weekend when she went on Megyn Kelly and said that there was intelligence that the community tried to leave out related to Tren de Aragua and how they work, from the intelligence that she put out and what they laid as the justification for the executive order that President Trump did related to TDA. That comes as no surprise, but why protect? Okay, the intelligence community we know often protects China, but why protect the Venezuelan regime? It's because there's so many ties there, right, with China.
Well, there's a lot more to it than that. It gets down to, where are the analysts educated who specialize in Western Hemisphere? You look at every single Latin American studies department at every university in the country. They're all hysterical Marxists. They're all hate America firsters. They're all, we have to support every liberation movement from Che Guevara to Tren de Aragua because America is so bad. It's products from these universities that go into our intelligence community as analysts, and it's been this way for decades. Even 40 years ago, President Reagan had to do a runaround around the CIA's analytical directorate because they were not coming up with evidence of Soviet arms shipments to communist revolutionary groups in our hemisphere. CIA wasn't even collecting information on it, and what it did collect, it wasn't analyzing properly. So this is nothing new within the CIA. So when you have our intelligence community providing fundamentally faulty, skewed, and dishonest information to our national decision-making leaders, because the CIA is supposed to work for the president and help the president make decisions, we're in a messed up situation where it takes somebody like Tulsi Gabbard from the top down to say, just like Bill Casey did, Reagan's CIA director, to force the analysts to go back to the drawing board and find the information that everybody knows is out there.
I want to get on to some of the military movements that President Trump has made. It's not been confirmed, but Brandon Weichert, who works with this show and pays a lot of attention to that, believes that the submarine Trump deployed was a Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack sub. That would mean then, if so, it has Tomahawk cruise missiles on board and could actually potentially have special forces teams ready to go into Venezuela too. So that's just another part of this puzzle. But this could also just be, it does seem that Maduro is very concerned, right? He has gotten out there, he's been vocal. Will these other countries like Iran try to come to his aid? Because obviously they benefit from some of the actions of the Maduro regime, be it destabilizing the United States via paramilitary troops or interfering in our election, right? And we'll get on to that a little bit later. Will this end up being potentially a direct conflict with Iran or China, who might come to the aid of Venezuela?
Well, China probably won't come to their aid in a serious way. The Iranian regime's capabilities are really degraded, but their terrorism capabilities are not. The human smuggling operations certainly are not degraded very much. They're degraded somewhat to coming to our border, but you still have, I mean, look at this now. In the previous Trump administration, you had a friendly government in neighboring Brazil to Venezuela, friendly to the U.S., and a friendly government in Colombia. Now you have a Marxist government in Brazil and a Marxist government in Colombia, where the head of the government, the president, is a former narco-guerrilla member. So you have little Panama sitting there as the transit point by land from South America up our way. And they have a very dense jungle, sort of no man's land called the Darien Gap, which has been a major smuggling route. That's where the Biden Department of Homeland Security built camps to process the illegals so they could come up to the United States. Trump and Panama have shut that down. So we have assets to be able to stop it, but our options by land are much more limited than before because the politics of the region have changed.
Final question. There's been a lot of movement related to Venezuela, though it's been mostly related to the narco-terrorism, or that's at least what the public statements made about these moves by the Trump administration have been related to. There's the, Tren de Aragua, there's the narco-terrorism, the money laundering. What about the election aspect of this? Do you expect to see some movement on that anytime soon, Mike Waller?
I think that might be of interest, because if you look at where the Smartmatic was from, and we might learn a lot more about Smartmatic in the future. There was a successful attempt to smack people down from talking about it, as you well know. But that's Venezuelan technology to put Maduro in power and keep him in power, that was then exported in the United States and around the hemisphere, around the world. So that's going to be a big deal. So you have subversive elements of the Venezuelan regime that are not just narco or not just violence or not just guerrilla oriented. It's really undermining and destroying our systems and the systems of the region. I mentioned the change in politics before. In the region, it would be nice to see what kind of technology was used in those elections. So you've got the Smartmatic. You've got also Venezuela has territorial claims on one of its neighbors, a small country, but it's a friendly country, Guyana, which has just discovered huge oil reserves. It's part of our duty in the hemisphere, under the Monroe Doctrine and the Roosevelt corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, to make sure we have a whole inter-American system to make sure that countries don't invade one another and chop off their territories. So this is something that Venezuela is an aggressor country to the region. It's also the financial supporter for the communist regime in Cuba and for the huge American political network that's loyal to the communist regime. I mean, look at former Congresswoman, now Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass. She's one of them. A lot of Cuban subversion is being funded by Venezuelan oil money. So there's a whole lot more to this than simply, right, the gang and the narco activity.
There's so much more to this. In fact, we've covered Guyana a bit last year, and Venezuela's having set its sights on that region. So there's going to be so much happening, I believe, in the next few weeks, Mike Waller. So we want our audience to stay tuned right here to Lindell TV, because nobody's been on ahead of this like we have, as well as you, Mike Waller. So we hope you'll come back and join us soon as the developments occur. Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
giving you a little tease there as much as we can, right? Thanks, Mike.
Well, we'll see.
All right, up next, John Reed is running for the Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, which is a race that's heating up. Will President Trump make his way to Virginia to support the ticket? We'll ask John Reed after the break.
The last time President Trump was in office, gold soared 50% and silver went up a huge 53%. Americans who invested in silver and gold during Donald Trump's first presidency are very happy that they did it. And right now, gold continues to soar to the highest numbers in history. These gains are just an appetizer for what's to come. Some market analysis are saying that gold is predicted to rise another 30% in the next year alone. So now's the time to invest in gold and silver, and that's why I partnered with Fisher Liberty Gold. Fisher Liberty Gold is a conservative-owned and operated precious metals investment company. They even helped my good friend President Trump get elected through their contributions to Turning Point USA and other conservative groups. I have dedicated my life to ensuring that people get the best sleep ever. And in addition to owning a MyPillow, I can now sleep well at night knowing that you can all protect your savings with precious metals with Fisher Liberty Gold. With Fisher Liberty Gold, you can sleep well knowing that your retirement is secure. And if you call now, you're going to receive your very own presidential gold guide and qualify for up to $20,000 in free silver. But wait, there's more. Call now or text metals to 26786 to receive your presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty. And for a limited time, I will send you a free MyPillow for qualified accounts. This presidential gold guide from Fisher Liberty will tell you exactly why you need to own gold even while Donald Trump is president. And just by calling in, you get a free MyPillow for a limited time for qualified accounts and up to $20,000 in free silver. So don't wait. Call 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today. That's 1-888-4GOLD-19 or text metals to 26786 today to receive your free MyPillow and up to $20,000 in free silver.
Will you endorse Winsome Earl Sears in the Virginia governor's race?
Yeah, I would. I would. I think probably she's got a tough race. She shouldn't have, but because the candidate she's running against is not very good. But I think she's got a tough race. But I would, yeah.
Virginia's governor and lieutenant governor races are heating up, and there are finally some signs of life for the GOP. So much so that President Trump, as you just saw, is now getting involved and will be campaigning, he says, for the Republican gubernatorial candidate Winsome Sears. A recent poll conducted by Roanoke College during the week of August 7th asked likely Virginia voters who they support in the coming off-year gubernatorial election. According to the Roanoke College poll, quote, Democrat Abigail Spanberger holds a 7-point lead over Republican Winsome Earl Sears at 46 to 39%. The November election for Virginia governor. 14% of likely voters remain undecided, and 1% said they would vote for someone else. The poll went on to find that, quote, in the race for lieutenant governor, Democrat Ghazala Hashmi leads Republican John Reed, 38 to 35%, so a much smaller margin, and Democrat Jay Jones leads incumbent Jason Miyares for attorney general, 41% to 38%. Now, both leads, though, are within the margin of error. And I will also say, well, we all know how flawed polling is if it's not Rasmussen Reports or some of our other good friends. Now, this is all good news, right? Especially with even those biased polls being within that margin of error on those other two races, especially considering this woman right here, Abigail Spanberger. We call her Deep State Abby or CIA Abby around here. The Democrat running for the governor against Winsome Sears, she is a former CIA officer who was the Democratic Party's representative for Virginia's 7th congressional district until she decided to run for governor. She only won that one race, in the House because they suddenly found a memory stick on the night of the election that put her over her opponent suddenly. She has absolutely radical notions from supporting transgender surgeries for kids to abortion on demand. But these aren't even her scariest views, honestly. It's her ties to Langley that might concern us most. Friend of the show and former CIA bin Laden unit head, Dr. Michael Schur has argued that she's basically CIA's figurehead for regime change in Richmond. And join us now is John Reed. He's the current Republican candidate for lieutenant governor in Virginia. Boy, John, I cannot overstate, because I'm a Virginia resident, okay? I cannot overstate how high the stakes are for Virginians in this race. And I just want to make sure everybody understands who Abigail Spanberger is, and then the people running against you and against Jason Miyares. But it sounds like people are getting the message a little bit. This polling is definitely better than the last time you joined the show. And again, the polling's biased. We know that, but we watch the trends, right?
Yeah, and the trend is heading Republican because Democrats nationally and in Virginia are wrong almost every issue that the voters care about. And Abigail Spanberger, she was my congresswoman for a long time. She's done a pretty good job of pretending to be a moderate. You know, she comes across as the mom who's got the 3 kids and she lives in the suburbs, not even in her own congressional district, by the way, but nobody seems to really care about that. When in fact, she is way to the left. She voted with Nancy Pelosi 99% of the time that she was in Congress. She's the one who has put forward federal legislation to try to get rid of the right to work, which is one of the fundamental linchpins of a successful economy in Virginia, so that Virginians aren't forced into a union. She buddied up with Joe Biden, not just like a normal Democrat, but made excuses for him, even when it was so obvious that he was faltering as president. And yet the mainstream press around here continues to present her as a moderate. She's not a moderate. She's a big leftist. And I think the more Virginians recognize her voting record and get a chance to actually hear from her, which is why she's dodging debates, they're going to say, we're going with Winsome Sears, the Marine, the woman who has a business, the woman who's been a pretty strong lieutenant governor. And I think they're going to choose me, too, because when they hear about my opponent, who's like Mondami in a dress in Virginia, I mean, that's how radical she is. I think Virginia voters are going to say the Democrats haven't learned their lesson from 4 years ago, and they continue to double and triple down on bad policy. They're just not going to go for it.
Let's certainly hope so. And you have to look at the company they keep, right, John? Let's look who Deep State Abby is backed by. It's none other than Reid Hoffman, to the tune of millions of dollars. So Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, who also funded the lawsuit against Donald Trump by E. Jean Carroll, where she basically recounted a SVU episode as a story. Reid Hoffman, who gets behind, he's the one who funded the Smartmatic lawsuits. He is behind Abigail Spanberger to the tune of millions of dollars, as I said. So that has a lot to say. That tells you a lot as well.
Yeah, go through. There's a website called VPAT, Virginia Public Access Project. If anybody's interested, they can go through and see where all the money's coming for the Democrats. A lot of it out of state, a lot of it big Democrat money, and where our money's coming from. I mean, look at my case. My opponent, Ghazala Hashmi, the sitting state senator, who is a real radical. She's got, I think, $3 million. I got $200,000. And you know why that is? Because the Democrats are going to try to buy every position in Virginia with out-of-state money, while I'm working hard, and Ghazala Hashmi, like the rest of the Democrats, refuses to do any public debates. And I'm going to call these people out on it. Virginians are not going to go for that. They want their people, Republican and Democrat alike, to stand up and answer questions about their policy decisions. I'm ready to do it. I've offered 10 debates. She won't do any of them.
She won't do any debate.
0. I even agreed to do NPR in D.C. Talk about rigging it.
Talk about being in the one down position for you.
Come on, you know? I mean, how much more open can somebody possibly be than for me to offer that, right?
That's offering yourself up to almost be sacrificed. They're so bad. That's quite a statement there, John. I wasn't aware of that. I also want to just highlight that Abigail Spanberger, and so by proxy, we'll say your opponent Hashmi, because you can lump them together. But they're very much in the vein of Russia collusion. So, Abby was a spreader of the Russia collusion delusion. I'm not even going to bother to play that soundbite. In the meantime, she also tried to pin Tulsi Gabbard, the current director of national intelligence, who I'd say is one of the standouts of this current Trump administration. I think she's actually probably the most effective appointee thus far. Abigail Spanberger tried to paint her as a Russian agent. So you'll get more of that kind of stuff. And not really a focus, I believe, on what we need here in Virginia. And there's a lot. I mean, there's been some, it's been a good 4 years under Governor Youngkin, but there's still a lot of work to be done here in Virginia. And I'll say that as a Virginia resident. Seems like President Trump, there were some questions about if he would campaign in Virginia. He has now spoken publicly that he will likely be coming here. I heard yesterday from a campaign source that he will likely come twice. Have they officially confirmed that with you all?
I have not heard that, but
Okay.
I'm fine with the president coming to Virginia. Look, I don't even argue with people about his personality anymore. I know there's probably 35-40% of the people who don't like Donald Trump. They hated Ronald Reagan. They hated George W. Bush. I mean, this is just the way it is. That's okay. I'm looking at policies that he is implementing that are difficult and will be painful because we've been reckless for decades and with $37 trillion in debt, and somebody's got to come in and make some tough decisions. And I think that in the end, through the pain, we're all going to be in a better place, hopefully economically and culturally, on the other side of the decisions that President Trump is making. And I have told a couple of Republican big shots in D.C. that I used to work with when I was in the staffer in the Senate. I've said, you guys need to think, what are you going to do on November 5th? You have two options for headlines. One is that the Republicans swept Virginia, that it is a great new day for conservative thought in Virginia and across the country, and Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing well. And the counter headline is a failure here in Virginia, and you guys need to get in the game and make sure you fund these campaigns and that you drum up attention for us. I think the president knows what's on the line, and he'll be involved in this. And you got a great slate of candidates, not just the three of us running statewide, but a lot of great candidates who are small business owners, who are motivated, smart people who are running for the House of Delegates, and that's going to be important all across the state too.
Yeah, it certainly is. I covered the Youngkin campaign, and I was there on election night at Youngkin headquarters on the night that he won. So I know, President Trump got behind Youngkin in a big way, and that did seem to help. I think that there's a lot of moms who got behind Youngkin, so hopefully they'll come out for this ticket this year, because I think it made a big difference. But it's in those cities. It's like Richmond, and I'm in the Charlottesville area. I don't usually share that, but I'm in the Charlottesville area. Those people might not like Donald Trump, but you just go a few minutes outside, and everywhere else, he's very popular in Virginia.
Yeah. And the thing, if you were there covering Governor Youngkin when he won, the very thing that catapulted him to victory, the Democrats still haven't figured it out. You look at these headlines that allow Fairfax, Arlington, all of these elected Democrats keep telling parents that they don't care what the parents think, that they're going to break the law, and they're going to continue to push the transgender insanity that is taking school systems of 80,000 students and turning them into circuses over 53 students who claim to be trans. I mean, look, I'm the first openly gay candidate to ever run in Virginia on a statewide ticket. And I'm telling you, this is insanity. And somebody has to have the guts to stand up and say, let's return to normalcy in these classrooms and treat people fairly and with decency. But to have boys in girls' locker rooms and to act like that's legitimate, it's just got to stop. And I think parents have had enough of it.
I think they have. I talk to lib moms around here, and they're not for that either. They definitely don't feel safe with their daughter, and they're like the old school feminists. They're like, they're just trying to replace us. So the Democrats have definitely doubled down in Virginia. We'll see how much it plays out. We'll watch closely, and we'll see if Donald Trump does indeed come to Virginia. Thank you so much, John Reed. We'll catch up with you soon.
All right, glad to see you.
Up next, we have a special Swamp Watch with Noel Fritsch as a special agent of the FBI who convinced a Proud Boy to turn on his own with alleged lies during his testimony in specifically Enrique Tarrio's trial. Noel Fritz joins us next with the full story. National File broke this story, and we talked about it last week, but we're going to talk about it in more depth after this commercial break.
Let's face it, you can't trust Big Pharma. They've already tried to block ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, and raise prices on everything from antibiotics to your daily meds. Well, there's good news. All Family Pharmacy is standing up for medical freedom and helping people get the treatments they actually want. My family and I use them all the time. They made it easy and affordable without the runaround. While other pharmacies are jacking up prices, they've actually dropped theirs. Ivermectin now starts at just $2 a capsule. Use my promo code Lindell10, you get an extra 10% off of that. You need ivermectin, antibiotics, or methylene blue, you name it, they've got it. They make it simple. You fill out a short online form, a licensed doctor reviews it, and your meds ship fast right to your front door. If you want to be prepared and have your medications on hand, this is your new pharmacy. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10 saves you even more. That's allfamilypharmacy.com/Lindell. Promo code Lindell10.
A key witness who was used by the Biden regime's federal prosecutors to throw the book at the Proud Boys for their alleged role in the January 6th protests has officially recanted. The man in question, his name is Jeremy Bertino, and he has released his signed affidavit detailing the horrific way he and others were pressured into cooperating with the Biden regime. The goal for the Biden prosecutors was not to seek justice, no. Instead, it was to accomplish flagrantly political objectives. Here's a brief video explaining why the Biden regime's political attack dogs visually subjected the Proud Boys and other J6ers to in order to get their seditious conspiracy convictions. Watch.
I had everybody there. Jocelyn Ballantyne was there. Jason McCullough was there. I mean, the whole room was full of people when I flew up there. That was one of the coaching sessions. They practiced cross-examining me. They'd send feedback to my attorney like, hey, this was said, but this is not what we want. So we need to mold him to say it this way. That was pretty coached. You know, if I had gone out and committed a crime, if you say these guys got together and we went and robbed a bank, we got caught, I'd be like, okay, you know what? I did a crime. You got the right to come down on me. But we didn't do a crime. I didn't do anything. Look what they did to Enrique, 22 years and he wasn't even at the Capitol, and so that just proves that they were not just threatening, they were going to do it.
So why is this only coming out now? More importantly, why haven't all the J6ers had their sentences commuted and been totally pardoned, considering we know now the kinds of shenanigans the Biden regime employed to get these convictions? Noel Fritz joins us now. He's the publisher of the National File, and he broke this story. Noel, I suspect this is just one of many of these types of stories, right? Why did Jeremy come forward now?
Well, Emerald, first of all, thanks for having me. And that's a good question. And this question of timing is there's a lot going on with it. First of all, we had 4 years of the Biden regime. Now, Emerald, there's a phrase that we haven't heard since way back in the George Walker Bush days. Chilling effect. If you remember back between, and Judith Miller and everything almost 20 years ago now, good Lord, we are getting old. They were always, every day you'd open up Politico and whatever else, and chilling effect, ad nauseum. We didn't hear anything about, we haven't heard chilling effect, for a long time from the Mockingbird media. And it's not just the liberal Mockingbird media too. Emerald, it's really important. Before we dive into the specs of this case, thank you for covering this story. You know, as well as I know, that one of the biggest problems that we have is getting these types of stories through the conservative Inc. Media industrial complex, the Mockingbird media industrial complex that is run in many, many cases by foreign sovereign wealth, foreign countries that launder the money through different entities and into a bunch of big name brand, quote unquote, Republican, although I will say international Bolshevik media outlets like the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro, like Mark Levin. And there are others. We're working on trying to bust through with some of them, and maybe they'll be nice. One of the most effective tools they use, Emerald, is they'll delay this story. In 2 years, you'll hear somebody like Glenn Beck come out. He's one of the approved release valve guys. In 2 years, he'll cover the story as if it's brand new. And then we'll be asking the question even more pointedly that you just asked, why now? And it'll be like years later, and these guys are still like Joe Biggs will be, struggling, and he can't get his pardon. So to the details of the case, Bertino wasn't even in Washington, D.C. on January the 6th. I was in D.C. I was a mile away running media, and the feds came to my house and tried to bother me and my family. And they came to Bertino, and they said at first, hey, just start talking with us and nothing will happen. And they engaged in this 15 meeting long, almost year long grooming process with him, wherein they just continued to keep him talking, and they weren't going to offer him anything. And they kept on bringing proffers. There were multiple proffers offered over time where they groomed him, and then they played hide the ball, and they never actually showed the true nature of what his ultimate charges were going to end up being. And then at the very end, they said, hey, if you want to avoid 2 decades plus, 3 decades plus in federal pen, we're going to need you to go ahead and rat your brothers out. And he, at the very beginning of the whole process, had said, hey, these guys didn't do anything wrong. And so they knew that that's what they were dealing with. They knew that the truth was that they were engaged in a malicious prosecution the entire time. Nicole Miller is still employed by Pam Bondi's DOJ. She's one of the primary perpetrators of this illegal prosecution. And
why is she still employed? I know we've reached out. We haven't heard back yet, but it was just Friday. I think we reached out, so we'll give them grace. I assume you've asked why she's still employed. That is just egregious.
Yep. I've tried everything I can do to get in touch with Nicole herself. They hide. There are two. It's important. There's Nicole Miller, who is part of the HR department over the DOJ. This is not that Nicole Miller.
Sure. Let's be sure to clarify.
Yeah. So I'm not making any claims about the positive character attributes of Nicole Chole Miller at the DOJ. I'm sure she's just as scuzzy as Nicole Cole at the FBI. But there you have it. It's just so important to notice that Bertino wasn't even there. Okay. And here they're bringing all these, and then it's at nationalfile.com. You guys got to go read it. The linchpin document that Nicole Miller used as, her, slamming the book shut and banging the gavel on the table, claim with Jeremy Bertino to get him to rat on his Proud Boy brothers was the 1776 document, the supposed insurrection plan, which is a joke. Okay. On many levels. First of all, the document doesn't even detail anything resembling an insurrection. It is a standard layout. It's kind of like activist day of plan for some basic activist protesting that is de rigueur inside of D.C. with the Democrats. If I can use that funny language, it's run-of-the-mill protest stuff over in the Hart Senate office building. And that stuff happens all the time. The police,
and it was written by an intel guy, right?
Yeah.
Who was still part of the community. He was a Fed. He was written by a Fed.
And then they tried, we don't know exactly how it got routed into, and so Nicole Miller's claim to Bertino was, he is in possession of this insurrection document. And and that was basically all it took is I guess he had a plan. Holy cow. So Bertino thought it was like a real deal. Here's the kicker. And I know you probably have already covered this, Emerald, but it's worth repeating. Enrique Tarrio had never opened the document and the feds knew this. So open and shut case. Nicole Miller was prosecuting a malicious, illegal prosecution. And National File has, I'm going to go ahead and say this everywhere. We're going to tease this. I've got the text messages. There's a kill switch, guys. I've got the text messages multiple places that prove that Nicole Miller was intercepting messages. They were supposed to be defendant and defense attorney privileged, and they were using those communications to take defense witnesses off the table. That is highly illegal, and they know it. And so there's jail time for these people. And so that story was reported cursorily in sort of claim format. National File has the receipts. We will be publishing the receipts. I'll bring them to you, Emerald, when we do. But look, Emerald, you know, the broader context is that we're looking at an ongoing kind of slow rolling coup. And I would argue that the coup is even taking place now with Donald Trump in office. And I know you probably tend to agree, although that's a pretty bold statement. But these are powerful people. Look, the way I say it to folks is when the day that July 13th, just over a year ago in Butler, PA, they made an offer to Donald. And I don't believe that they have rescinded that offer. That offer for a bullet behind the ear is still on the table. And so the question is who made that offer? That whole story has gone away. And so it's important that we view every single one of these stories in the broader context of the fight to the death for the control of this republic. Right now, Emerald, I think all three branches are entirely captured. The judiciary refuses to release any information about Epstein. The Congress with Virginia Fox in North Carolina is refusing to release any information about Epstein. Okay. And obviously the executive branch and the DOJ and Bondi and this guy, Todd Blanche, who's a little S stain, and hopefully he leaves soon, is refusing to do anything with Epstein. And it's not just because they're buddies and they've been on boat and yacht parties together. And obviously it's horrendous that there are victims of human trafficking and trafficking involved. That's horrible. And obviously there's a two-tier system of justice. Okay. And rich people are getting away with stuff and poor victims don't get justice. But coming out of the weeds on that stuff, and I hate to say that's the weeds, but we're talking about the control of the entire federal government with influence operations like this. Many, many more on the line. Okay. Because of influence operations like this Epstein thing and like what's going on currently with, sadly, our executive branch in Washington, D.C., despite the fact that I'm just going to say it, air quotes, won in 2024.
Look, Tulsi Gabbard has been very clear that they're continuing to fight a coup. I mean, they have had to fight tooth and nail. She has had to directly intervene to make sure that important intelligence makes its way to the president's desk. And that's one way that they commit coups, is that they keep the important information from making it to the commander in chief so that he can't make informed decisions, right? And do what he needs to do with executive action. And there's it's the swamp. It has been a swamp for a long time. It takes longer than 4 years. It takes longer than one administration to totally fix this. So if we think, it's going to be fixed in 4 years, we know it's not, but we want it to be effective. And we're hearing that this is going to be a big week. We hope so. No, we'll all keep our eyes on it. Because, yes, I do believe there's an ongoing coup. I've laid it out very, I think, specifically on this show in detail. Keep us posted on what you find out. You're going to drop those receipts. You can find the story at nationalfile.com, right? Nationalfile.com. Also, we're running out of time. You mentioned Virginia Fox in North Carolina. There's some big North Carolina news related to the current RSC chair, Michael Whatley. We don't have time for that this week, so we'll have to try to revisit that next week, Noel, because I definitely want to hit that, because I talked about Michael Whatley before anybody even knew his name and who he really was. So I definitely North Carolina is an important state. We've had a bad senator there. We don't want another one. Thanks, Michael.
Whatley endorsed Tillis a few months ago. It's horrendous. Exactly. So we got to get rid of the guy.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much, Noel. Great reporting. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Welcome to Vocal, the free speech social app that gives you a platform to amplify your voice. Speak freely, connect boldly, and be part of a growing movement for truth, faith, and freedom. Want to know what's happening right now? The Now Playing feature shows you exactly who's live and what's streaming in real time. Check out the show's feed, a non-stop lineup including Lindell TV News 24/7, shows and on-demand programming all in one place. Connect with your favorite host and never miss a show. Explore the featured page for quick access to Lindell TV's top shows. Follow your favorites and watch their newest content flow right into your feed. And when they go live on Vocal, you can join the live chat and be part of the action. Ask questions, share your thoughts, even help shape future shows. Stay informed on issues around securing our elections by following your state's Cause of America account. Join a group and connect on a deeper level, from faith and freedom to the future of our nation. Go to vocal.com or download the app today and be a part of the mission to save our country.
Well, fortunately, there's good news. So the bad news is flaws in unreliable automation can have bad consequences. But the good news is that recent work by computer scientists, including several who are in this room, has focused on this, and we've actually made terrific progress in figuring out how to conduct highly reliable elections using unreliable components, which is a neat trick in security. And so I am actually optimistic about this. And we've seen terrific progress. Elections are getting better in the US, where there is less uncertainty than ever. And that trend is going to continue with your help.
There they admit it. I mean, they're just going to keep rigging elections, is what you could extrapolate from that talk given at DEF CON Village, Voting Village at DEF CON. That's the hacking convention that recently wrapped up in Las Vegas. They don't really want transparency. In fact, that's most evident in an audio recording obtained by News 9 in Denver of the Deputy Secretary of State talking to a county clerk about why they didn't tell the clerks themselves that Jocelyn Benson's Secretary of State's office had leaked sensitive passwords on the website. Take a listen. All right, we don't have that one, but anyway, in a video obtained by Denver 9, the Deputy Secretary of State Chris Bill admitted to a county election clerk that they didn't tell counties about the notorious password leak on the Secretary of State's website, which we covered months ago because of the obvious media firestorm it would ignite. And we all feel the way the Democrat County Colorado clerk felt. He said I'm going to just use the initials, BS. Not only would it cause a flurry of media activity, but it is further evidence that the former Mesa County clerk, Tina Peters, was absolutely justified in her actions to promote transparency in Colorado elections, an act for which she continues to be punished, languishing in a Colorado jail for her bravery and patriotism. Last week, President Donald Trump once again drew attention to the continued persecution of American hero Tina Peters, saying he might have to, quote, use harsh measures if she's not released soon. What are such serious measures of which he speaks? Well, Ash Epps made a suggestion for bringing Colorado officials to help Tina. Ash wrote on her Ash in America Substack, quote, the primary lever that President Trump has to free Tina Peters is withholding federal funding. There are novel ideas about declaring her a federal witness, but in my opinion, novel theories are a long shot. And Ash Epps joins us now. Ash, thank you so much for joining us. We're all very focused on securing the release of Tina Peters. She's an American hero. There's no bones about that. And we want to see her free soon. I found it very interesting what you said, and that's why I wanted to have you on, because we're always looking for ways, right? We're talking about constructive ideas here. I was one who suggested that, yes, she's a federal whistleblower and as such, should be offered the protection. You say that's a long shot. I don't disagree. And I'm very interested to hear about the federal funding idea that you presented in your Substack. Can you share that with us?
Yeah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So the timing of President Trump's Truth Social post was perfection. The Colorado General Assembly kicked off legislative session on Thursday to deal with the $1.2 billion budget deficit that they have. And a lot of this comes from the federal cuts that have happened since President Trump took office. Now, these people are drunk on spending, and the first 3 days of this, they've focused on generating new revenue. So taxes and fees and whatnot. But President Trump dropped this Truth Social post as that General Assembly special session was kicking off, and harsh measures for Colorado. They certainly think about funding cuts. It was when the cuts started coming down from Trump 2.0, all the Democrats were out saying, you can't do this. 40% of our budget is federal funding. And then they've sort of, I think, realized that that's not a great message. So they've rolled it back a little bit. It's, it's between 30 and 35%. Whatever. If there's additional cuts, they're going to have to figure out how to make that up to keep doing things like the Wolf Project, where they've released a bunch of wolves because the governor's husband wants to, and half the wolves are dead. And there's all these second and third order consequences of, relocating wolves here. They also just voted in the last session to have taxpayer funded face contouring and top and bottom surgery for transgender individuals because they have a right to live in the way that they want to live. And so taxpayers have to subsidize that. All of these things that they do in Colorado that, the people broadly don't support, but they don't care what the people think. They can't do that without federal subsidies. And it is probably 40%. The other aspect of this that I think is really important for people to realize, I know it's something you talk about quite a bit, is that 10% of jobs in the state of Colorado are NGO specific jobs, which are, largely funded by taxpayer dollars. So there's a lot of cuts that they could make to make up the budget deficit. President Trump threatening more cuts as they're dealing with this existential crisis, because all of these, nice to have things that the government shouldn't be doing, in my opinion, are only possible because federal taxpayers, everybody is subsidizing Colorado's communist experiment.
I had no idea it was 10%.
Yeah,
employment is related to NGO. That is astonishing, Ash. But you make I love this idea because we're always looking for new ideas. I think that's a great idea. And we've seen it work already in the District of Columbia, right? They pulled some federal funding and they painted back over and paved over BLM Plaza, which is where my Newsmax office used to be. And now it's just a regular street. It's 16th and I again.
Yeah, BLM Plaza, if I'm not your prior guest, Noel Fritz was talking about Jeremy Bertino recanting. If I'm not mistaken, he's the one that was stabbed. He's the Proud Boy that was stabbed in December of 2020 in BLM Plaza.
I didn't know that either. You're just a fond of it.
Well, the Proud Boy story has always bothered me because I marched a lot in the wake of the stolen election, and I felt safe because of the Proud Boys. There was, a lot of bad rap about these, racist, whatever. Those guys would never have let me get anywhere near violence. They were protective of, women and vulnerable people in the crowd, and they were a big part of the reason that we were able to march safely here in Colorado and the couple times that I marched in Washington, D.C. So that the way that the history of the Proud Boys has been rewritten has always bothered me.
Yeah, they've been absolutely demonized in the corporate media, and they're the group that's really not able to move on yet. Their situation hasn't been fully rectified, despite, Trump's action for the J6ers. There's still some problems there. Real quick, we have about 1 minute. Sorry, we were tight on time because of some of the things that happened in this show. But I do want to also, I do want you to go to Ash's Substack. She has an excellent Substack. I also just love the history you do. I love history. So I enjoy when you do these moments in history. Right now you're talking about America's 250th. You share some great stories. Also great for kids, sharing the history. I love it. So definitely subscribe to her on Substack. I do. You mentioned Andrew Klein. We've got 1 minute. Who is he and why he's important? He's related to Perkins Coie, who we've talked about a lot on this show.
Yeah, so Andrew Klein is our current Deputy Secretary of State here in Colorado. We know for certain that the deputy is the one that runs that office. Jenna is a puppet. She's there to do MSNBC interviews and, with the eyes and everything. But Andrew Klein came in. They didn't announce this. We actually discovered this because his name just was all of a sudden on the masthead of their press releases, listing him as the deputy. His predecessor was Chris Beall, who suddenly resigned after allegedly taking a sabbatical. He then, resigned, told the clerks, but didn't tell. There was no press release. There was no announcement about this. But Andrew Klein in March of 2025 was brought in as the new Deputy Secretary of State. He is a former Perkins Coie guy, very interesting background, which is laid out in my Substack article. But what's really notable about that, I think, is that in March of 2025 is when President Trump dropped the, dealing with the Perkins Coie, I believe the executive order was entitled Addressing Risks from Perkins Coie LLP, March 6th of 2025. That executive order comes down, and then all of a sudden, one of their partners is the Deputy Secretary of State in Colorado. No fanfare, no announcement. And I have, I've been speculating for a while since the DOJ put in their statement of interest in Tina Peters' case about the weaponization of government, that we were going to see a showdown here. And what we have seen is a moving of the deck chairs. They are moving people around and I think shoring up for a fight, and we're here for it.
That's amazing. Go to her Substack, read more about it. It's a very important story. Thank you so much, Ash, for joining us. Sorry we ran out of time. It's good to see you.
No worries. Okay, you too.
All right, that's it for me. We go to DC Live next, where President Trump is meeting with South Korea. See you tomorrow.